Rise of Kingdoms is a game with many rules created by the players, rules that are usually enforced by a kingdom. But what if you want to break those rules? What if you want to steal an event like the Mightiest Governor? What if you want to zero a player's city? Maybe you are looking to become what is called a rogue player. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you everything about being a rogue player. As someone who's stolen a Mightiest Governor before, and someone who's been in kingdoms who deal with rogue players quite well, I'm going to tell you both how to be a rogue player, and I'll also teach players who don't want to go rogue how to deal with rogue players. So if you've got a pesky rogue player in your kingdom, or maybe you're looking to become a rogue player yourself, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now, let's just start off today's video by discussing what a rogue player is. And in my opinion, there are two types of rogue players. You've got rogue players who go against your own kingdom, and then you've got rogue players who are just there to be a nuisance against enemy kingdoms in KVKs. And the first type of rogue I will call are the malicious rogue players. I've personally been one of these before, and these are the players who are zeroing players in their own kingdom to win events. For example, someone may be angry at their kingdom. Maybe the king did something they're not happy with, and they're looking to migrate at some point in the very near future, and they go rogue. And what they do is they start attacking farms, they start attacking people's gatherers, and they start killing people's troops off who are just walking around or fighting barbarians. And these rogue players are often the most hated. I'm sure you've dealt with them before, and they're usually trying to win an event like the Mightiest Governor, or they're just trying to send a message, or maybe they're just angry or quitting the game. And these rogue players often target their own kingdoms or their own allies in a KVK, and they're probably the more common groups of rogue players you will see, and they really don't care what happens to their account. The other type of rogue player is a player who is rogue in a KVK but against the enemies. I say rogue in that way because rogue also means fighting alone, fighting by yourself. So these type of rogue players are fighting by themselves just to make the enemy's life really annoying. So for example, and I've done this as well, if you lose a KVK, you can leave your city in Kingsland with no troops in it, and we'll talk about that later, and just be an absolute nuisance to the enemy teams, just hitting their farmers, killing their barbarians, burning some of their flags if you have that option. Tons of things you can do by just leaving your city in a zone that they think is safe and being an absolute nuisance to them. And these players I would call more strategic rogue players. They're players who are just being rogue to grind more kills for their account, and they're not attacking their own allies. They're attacking their enemies still, just they're pretty much by themselves, or there might be one or two other players with them, and they're not fighting on territory, they're not fighting for anything besides just kills and being a pain in the enemy's butt. So those rogues are more strategic, they don't care about events, they're just out to make the enemy's time pretty much unfun and make their time hell. So for example, a rogue player in Kingsland right now would just start wiping out all of these gathering marches with their own marches, because their city has access to this zone, which is probably a safe zone from the look of it. So those rogue players are probably the other type of rogue player you'd really see, and they are more there just to make the enemy's time really, really tough. So now that we've discussed what each type of a rogue player is, when should somebody go rogue? When should you start breaking kingdom rules, or when should you start annoying your enemies? And first of all, if you're looking to be a malicious rogue player and go rogue against your kingdom, the time you go rogue is really to win a Mightiest Governor. This is when you're going to get the usual most value for breaking tons of kingdom rules, because many kingdoms, mine included, are kingdoms which have fixed Mightiest Governors. This means these kingdoms actually have a set group of people who will win the Mightiest Governor to benefit the kingdom the most. And if you go rogue, you can often steal higher rankings in this Mightiest Governor. For example, I think rank 5 here was a rogue player last time, and they put it, no, maybe this wasn't a rogue player. I know we had a rogue player at some point. Usually we push them out of the rankings, but when that happens, then you'll notice those rogue players can get a higher ranking in the Mightiest Governor because they're not going to listen to the point limit. I mean, the point limit is here to ensure everyone gets some amount of gold heads in a normal amount, and it's not too game breaking. But if you go rogue, you can just break that rule and go as high as you want in points. You can attack players, cities, do whatever you want really to get as many points in the Mightiest Governor. And if you go rogue in this point, you have the chance to win up to 180 gold heads for any commander that's in that Mightiest Governor, and that's definitely an incentive for someone to go rogue, and probably one of the better times to do it. Other than that, there's not really any other time you should go rogue. I mean, unless you really, really dislike a kingdom, there's no reason to go rogue other than trying to win a Mightiest Governor, because you might as well save the resources and save the troops, since trying to win a Mightiest Governor this way is expensive, and through my personal experience, you're going to take like 500,000 deads for usually a rank 2 to 3, and if you have a bigger account, you can maybe go for a rank 1. So it's definitely more expensive to try win a Mightiest Governor this way, but it will almost guarantee you some amount of commander sculptures if you do go rogue to try and win a Mightiest Governor. And like I said, you probably want to do this when you're about to leave a kingdom, because they're not going to look too kindly on you if you just zeroed all their farms for your own personal gain. So going rogue in a Mightiest Governor is probably the best time, and you also want to have a way to escape that kingdom, or you're just going to quit the game. So either one of those is probably going to be the best time to go rogue as more of a malicious rogue player. If you're a player looking for a nice few extra KVK kills and you're a strategic rogue player, then you're probably gonna go rogue really once the Kingsland zone, or whichever zone you're trying to go rogue in, is completely closed off to only your allies. Once your own kingdoms and allies have been pushed out, then it's your chance to usually random teleport into Kingsland and sit around there until your city wall gets completely burned. You want to be able to go in and just go completely crazy and kill a ton of their farm accounts, fight all of their barbarian farmers. All of that stuff is the best way to really go rogue during a KVK, and like I said, you do this after you lose a KVK, once you're fully out of the zone and all the passes are controlled by the enemies, because that's when they're realistically going to be least expecting it. They don't really expect an enemy player to still be in their zone, killing troops and fighting them after the KVK has ended and they have been pushed out of the zone. And these rogue players will often get tons of kills. I've done it myself. I got 100 million kill points in like a day doing it with like no real big cost to me. So doing stuff like this can actually get you quite a few kills toward the end of a KVK. If you just want a few extra kills, or if you just want to spite your enemies a little bit more, then it's really a good time to do it. Once you're pushed out of a zone and they own all the passes, maybe even after they own the Great Ziggurat, then you can really strike, because they're not going to be expecting you to start attacking them pretty much out of nowhere, since they think it's a safe zone, and they start gathering with normal commanders like, I bet this has a Constance in it or something, I bet this probably has a Gaius Marius, because they don't expect their enemies to be in that zone and fighting them. So after the enemies control the zone, you strike, and you can get literally tons of kills within the first couple hours, even the first couple days, before your enemies really notice. So now that we've discussed when you should go rogue and what the types of rogue players are, how would you go rogue effectively? What's the best way to do it to give yourself the most value and eliminate a lot of the risks? And we'll talk about the risks a little bit later, but one thing you should really do if you're being a rogue within your own kingdom is you probably want to leave the main alliance. Even if they invite you back to the main alliance, don't join that alliance, because they will know where your city is, and you want to try find a dead alliance, hopefully, that has some form of alliance territory sitting around. You don't want to be able to just go onto any alliance that anyone can join, because once again, they can also find your city. So you want to find usually a dead alliance, or you want to have control of an alliance that you can just kick everybody out of and control. I also recommend before you leave your main alliance to either find the best zone with the most amount of farms in it, or also find a zone where you'll be relatively safe. Often a zone where the main alliances will have trouble accessing you is a good idea. So for example, if I went rogue in 1534 right now, I'd try find an alliance where the B534 passes, didn't have access to it. So for example, I think this zone up here, B534 doesn't have access to a pass that goes into this zone. Obviously, we have alliances that go in there, but it is just one extra small hurdle that will give you a little bit of time when you go rogue. And often some kingdoms will be pretty disorganized in that regard, and they may have a whole zone where they have like one person who has one alliance that they have to let people in to try and attack you. And in those situations, if you're in that one alliance, and so if you're in that zone, you're going to be able to get a lot of kills before anyone can really do anything to you. Another benefit also of finding an alliance with a little bit of territory is you can actually teleport onto that alliance territory, which I mean is definitely a given, and you can put your troops into things like an alliance fortress, especially if the alliance is not touched by other cities. So for example, this alliance right here, this flag, it's in the middle of nowhere. They can't reach it. None of our other alliances can touch it. So if I went rogue, I would just fill this flag with as many troops as I can if I'm about to be rallied or attacked, because I'd be able to save a ton of troops. And one tip there is to use boosts such as a 50% expansion, and also use commanders who have some form of troop expansion in their kit. So for example, Epic Scipio Africanus has a 10% capacity bonus. Mehmed has a 15% capacity bonus. So 10% still. So being able to access extra troop capacity and pump them into alliance flags that your enemies cannot reach will pretty much make your city immortal, and if they attack it, you'll probably only get 7 wounds and they may just fill your hospital. Another thing you can also do if you're in an alliance, which is definitely really good, is you're pretty much able to launch a rally onto a random barbarian fort. So you can see here, I just joined this alliance. I think I'm whitelisted on the alliance, so that's why it let me in instantly. But I'm able to go and find any barbarian fort, and let's just say I found a level, even a flag. Let's say I find this flag right here, and I want to launch a rally on the flag. Then what will happen is my troops, which I'll launch a rally on this city. If I launch a rally on this city, then what means is all my troops that are inside of my city, that are in this rally, will not actually be inside my city. So if someone tries to attack me, my troops will be hidden inside my city, and those troops cannot be attacked. Pretty much what will happen is that the troops in my city will be hidden, and even though they will show up on enemy scouts, and even though they are in a rally and technically a part of my city, they won't show up in my city. And this can help you save peace shields if you've got only dead troops and 1 march left, or it can help you hide troops from your enemies when they try and rally you, and then they pretty much hit nothing and you take no deads and no 7 wounds. So that's just a quick tip to kind of hide troops and get away with zeroing players or being a rogue player. Now, if you're going rogue in a KVK, the same things still kind of apply, but in this situation, it's actually probably easier for you because you have the kingdom on your side. You're not working literally by yourself. You can be in your kingdom's main alliance. You still get alliance tech bonuses, and you'll also have access to an easy escape route if you need it by just teleporting back on territory. And let's say I'm a member of this alliance right here, CK48. I don't know if they lost KVK, but let's just say they did lose KVK. What I would do is I would join my alliance. I'd go to a random building in the middle of nowhere, preferably in your safe zone. So this is their safe zone here. And I would fill the flags with as many troops as I can with 4 march slots. If you have extra, maybe you do up to 6 marches inside a flag. And if you have the 7th march, you can put 6 marches in. So put as many marches as you want into a Crusader flag until you have the lowest amount of troops possible. Like I said, I recommend using an expansion for this, which is obviously going to benefit you again. And because these troops are in a safe zone in a flag, your city, if it gets attacked while you're in the Kingsland zone or while you're in any zone with enemies in it, they're pretty much going to find nothing there. And with that last march slot or that last march, what you can do is you can have 1 combat march left. For example, I would probably keep my Zulang with my Henry because it's one of my faster and strong marches. And what I would do is I'd just run around that zone, destroy as many farmers, destroy as many cities as I can with that 1 march. And then also once I log offline, instead of always putting a peace shield on, you can just launch a rally on an enemy city that may be off territory or on one of your own allied cities. So launching a rally on somebody for 8 hours will once again hide those troops like I said. So you can sit inside of this Kingsland zone with no troops in your city technically and just go ballistic on your opponent. Start attacking farms, and this is really easy if you're a low power player, and just start killing all of their troops. So really you're able to get a ton of sevs on your opponents without getting any deads, because if they rally or attack you, not only will you have no troops in your city, they won't even be able to fill your hospital. Often, if you have around 60 to 70 million power, you can pull off hiding all your troops, especially if you have some good crystal tech, because you'll be able to fill up most of the flag with 5 or 6 marches, and you can have that last march to attack your opponents. Not to mention, you can also fill your hospital slightly, and troops in your hospital obviously won't die. So let's say you had 500,000 total troops left, and you had 1 march slot. You're able to use 300,000 to fight other players, and then the last 200,000, if they get done as 7 wounds, it's okay because they're not going to die, and that's another way to hide the troops. You can take some 7 wounds, they'll fill your hospital, and you won't get dead, so that's perfectly fine. So being able to hide as many troops as you can before you go rogue in an enemy zone is definitely recommended. I also do recommend for all rogue players, this is just generic tips here, using a fast march that's able to go through resource nodes really quickly. Often cavalry marches are the best for this, so any strong cav march that you can give windswept gear usually is good. So if you're running a Nevsky Joan, don't run your legendary gear, run some windswept gear because you will be faster and you'll be able to outrun your opponents, which means you will not really be caught by them and you won't take much damage. You can also consider running other commanders that have ridiculous amounts of speed like Belisarius, or running a commander with the mobility tree. I'm not sure if I can find one. Yeah, you got someone like Jedwiga. I mean, this isn't the best example, but finding a commander with the mobility tree and running them is also an option as well. You can also use commanders with quick rage cycles like Zhang Yu and also like Hao Bing, because those commanders will be able to drop a ton of skills really quickly. One thing with Hao Bing, he can't really go through resource nodes, which definitely is going to make him a bit harder to use. But with someone like Zhang Yu, you can drop an active skill, probably kill a farming march, before your opponents can even hit you once, which will definitely give you a pretty good advantage in being able to just run around and wreak havoc on your enemies. So using quick and punchy commanders is definitely recommended when you go rogue, and usually with any rogue march, I'd pop as much march speed on it as I can. And if you're working with your kingdom, ask for the Justice title, ask for anything that's going to boost your march speed, try and get a march speed rune. All of these things are going to help you as you go rogue in an enemy zone, and if you're with your own kingdom and you're going rogue against your own kingdom, they're probably not going to give you a good title, so you're going to have to use stuff like maybe the Call of the Loyal that will make you faster, or like I said, rocking the Windswept gear, which will also improve your overall march speed. One other thing you can do to improve that march speed and allow you to get away quicker is running the, I think it's the triple line or just the line formation. That will make you, I think, about 5% quicker, and if you can get some extra things that make you quicker, it'll be also very good. So triple line formation with anything that increases your march speed is certainly recommended, so you can get away from your opponents much quicker, and also just be able to nuke other farming marches way easier. So anything with march speed, I definitely recommend if you're going rogue, since it's probably going to be your most valuable stat, since obviously you're not really going to fight anyone head on, since you are just going to be running one march or even just two marches pretty much by yourself. So now the next thing I would like to talk about is how would a kingdom deal with a rogue player? And I think there's a few ways to do this, and there's a few things you can do. First of all, you can evacuate players from that zone and pretty much lock them in there. For example, us in 1534 here, I'm pretty sure we have access to every single big alliance that has access to a pass. So if you have access to every alliance that has access to a pass, what you can do is pretty much you can lock the rogue in a zone, maybe you use the exile skill on them, and then you can control that zone and get everyone to move out of that zone, and that rogue player pretty much has nothing they can zero. So evacuating the zone and leaving that player stuck in there is really good. If you're in a KVK, like I said, if they put a shield on, you can exile their city. So if you're rogue, maybe keep that in mind. You don't always want to pop a shield. And if you use the exile, it's going to send that city basically back to its starting zone, and pretty much is going to eliminate them from being rogue, since if they're stuck in their starting zone, especially if you have control of all the passes around the zone they were in, they can't really do much. So for example, if you're in Kingsland and someone uses the exile skill, well then they're kind of screwed, because you are not able to get back in that Kingsland since you own all the passes, and that rogue just can't get back in. So exile is a good way to deal with a rogue in a KVK. Also, you can banish, which will teleport a city to a random province in your kingdom, and also if there's no space, they'll be teleported to the outermost province. So it'll pretty much move this city out of the way if you don't want them on Alliance territory anymore. This can also be quite useful. Other than that, you've got Imprison. If you notice someone's city has a lot of troops in it and they attack something, then you can imprison their city and attack their city and pretty much destroy it. So Imprison is also a pretty good thing that you can be using to eliminate your rogue players and kill all their troops before they can really do anything. But if they follow the tips I gave before about hiding troops and flags and using rallies, imprisoning them is not going to be the most valuable thing. So make sure you know if they have troops or not, and try and use that imprison skill wisely, because I think it has a cooldown of around 15 hours, which is quite long. So you can't use this willy-nilly. You have to get it at a really good timing where maybe they have a march out of their city, maybe they didn't hide their troops well, or maybe you got access to a flag that has their troops in it and you're able to kill all those troops. So Imprison definitely is a valuable way of dealing with a rogue player. You can also give rogue players negative titles. I recommend giving them the Sluggard title, because as you can see, minus 5% march speed, which is able to pretty much make them much slower and means you may be able to catch their marches and deal extra damage to them. Also, if you have access to an alliance with a lot of alliance tech, make sure you set it to close so they can't get in. So for example, I wouldn't let the rogue player in the main alliance, since it probably has the most amount of alliance technology. Same thing with some of the other bigger alliances that have maybe become shells or farm alliances that just have really good technology. Do not let them in there, because they're going to get access to better tech, and that means they're going to be able to kill more players and get away easier. The last thing to know when dealing with a rogue player, especially when it comes to stealing a Mightiest Governor, besides evacuating the zone so they can't get any more points, get the players who are supposed to win that Mightiest Governor to push up a little bit higher, and this will often mean the player that went rogue will get less gold heads and your kingdom will get more gold heads. So pretty much you'll be able to give the players who were meant to win the Mightiest Governor the gold heads they deserve, and you'll give the player who went rogue way less gold heads than they would get in rank 1. Because with Mightiest Governor, I think rank 1 is 180, rank 2 is like 90, and rank 3 is 50, and it just gets smaller and smaller from there. So knocking him down in the rankings is a great way to pretty much punish them for what they did, and it's going to limit the rewards they get from doing a rogue act and destroying farms and zeroing cities. So being able to pretty much prevent a rogue from winning like that is going to be pretty good for you, and it's going to give you a good advantage in terms of deterring future players from going rogue because you know how to deal with them, and then just punishing them so they don't get rewarded extremely well for breaking the kingdom rules. So being able to push a player down the ladders is going to be very good. I don't know if this player actually went rogue, but just as an example, if they were rank 1, you ask the players who were meant to get the higher ranks to push above them and knock them down the rankings, since compared to rank 1, they've now lost technically 130 gold heads, which is obviously quite the punishment. Now, the last thing I would like to talk about when it comes to being rogue is what are the disadvantages to it, both to your account and also to other players. And this is going to be more about going rogue in your own kingdom. As someone who's done it before, I kind of had first-hand experience of what happens. And the first thing that's going to be a disadvantage is you risk losing everything on your account. If your account is very big, possibly above 100 million power, even above 80, 90 million power, if you go rogue and they find your city and they are able to destroy your city, there goes all of your troops. So if you're looking to migrate with your troops, getting zeroed obviously is not going to help. So going rogue with all the troops in your city is going to screw you over, especially as a bigger power player who maybe can't hide all their troops in an alliance flag like I suggested. So that's definitely a big disadvantage. It's the risk of losing everything on your account, especially troops. I mean, resources, if you're going to migrate, you don't care about those, but some players want to migrate with a higher power to be ready for their KVK. So losing troops is definitely a big disadvantage, and just risks like that. Another thing that's a disadvantage, you're going to miss out on all the alliance rewards. So for example, if you're in a bigger spending alliance, you miss out on gold chests, you miss out on things like free alliance credits, and you also miss out on stuff like positive titles. Often you're going to be given a negative title, so if you've gone rogue, then you're not going to get access to all these good titles which allow you to progress your account a little bit quicker. This is more related to players who are newer to the game especially, but also even endgame players. Stuff like the slugger title with the training speed reduction is going to screw you over, so you're going to lose out on a lot of things such as alliance help. So you're going to lose out on things such as being able to just access Kingsland and all the extra resources in there. There are a few things that are bad about going rogue to your account. Also, it does detract from player experience. I mean, no one is happy to have their farmers attacked on like when they're asleep. No one's happy to have their barbarian marches attacked. So going rogue is just not really a good thing for that regard, unless you absolutely hate your whole entire kingdom. Then it's just going to make a bunch of players really angry at you. So if you're on good terms with your kingdom, you shouldn't go rogue just before you migrate. It's kind of selfish. If your kingdom has kind of screwed you guys over, maybe they kicked all the players out because they started zeroing people's cities and stuff, then I mean going rogue is somewhat justified. But going rogue just because you're migrating maybe isn't the best idea, since it does make a lot of players upset and it can make a kingdom very mad. So going rogue in a situation like that, probably not the best idea, and it is definitely a massive disadvantage, and it ruins a lot of people's experience. Going rogue in KVKs, to be honest, there's really no big disadvantages because you can hide your troops better since you have access to crystal tech. You're often working with your kingdom in that situation, and once again, that's just going to benefit for you. And you can still do most of your normal account things. Even fighting barbarians while you're rogue in Kingsland is certainly possible because, I mean, they can't really zero you if you only have one march, and they often aren't stalking your city. So you'll notice going rogue in Kingsland during a KVK isn't too bad, especially if it's against your enemies. So doing that, it's going to leave you pretty well off, and you're not going to get screwed over too bad, even if you do mess something up. But going rogue in your home kingdom or against your own allies is definitely more risky and can make a lot of people really angry. So now that we've made it to the end of today's video, I want to ask you guys for a very small favor, and that is, let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of today's video? Did you find it interesting, or was it kind of boring? I mean, I'm talking about something most people don't really do, and I'm also talking about something most people don't talk about. So if you are kind of confused by the video, or you didn't find it very interesting, tell me in the comments. If you found it really unique and really interesting, also let me know, because I do have a few ideas like this that I could publish. I'm just not 100% sure about it, and this video is kind of like a test. So if you're interested in the more controversial things to do in Rise of Kingdoms, things kind of drama related. Let me know in the comments. I am quite interested to hear your opinions, and I will respond to every single one. Now, I just want to say thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.